Triple peaks helps to cheapen the thrill. So it's single frank could redefine keeping it.
Excuse me. Hello, everyone. Let's see. Yep, there we go. Looks like that's all working. Good. Did not mean to cough in everybody's face. It was my bad. But hi, hello everyone. I hope everyone's doing well. Let's switch this over to just me. I forgot the coming soon, but here we go. The post of the Anarch, my journey to anarchism. Yes, I did see that. And we're probably gonna watch that today, Jane. So thank you for pasting that. It's good to see you. Welcome in. Off to a good start already. Good. Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the things that I wanted to get to talking about today. There are still, I mentioned that there's a lot of stuff I wanted to talk about on the last stream, and I still want to talk about those things. But I think that what I want to say is that I haven't yet identified my frustrations and concerns yet enough that I want to jump into that. Which is why it was fantastic that I saw that there was that video there this morning, and I was like, yes, that gives me something else to do instead of having to jump into this other stuff, kind of half-baked, half thought through, because I'm not a big fan of doing that. Tenekoe, welcome in. Great to see you, Kamatara. I hope you're having a great day. Good. So I wish that I had my ideas a little bit more organized, though, so far as today's stream, what I actually wanted to do for today's stream. But I haven't. So I'm doing a good job of getting. I still didn't fix the camera the right way. Caught up. I'm almost there. I know that I keep saying that, but I'm not quite caught up with all my stuff. So far as school goes, and personal affairs, things that I've got to get done in life in general. So so I haven't had as much time within the last few days to collect my thoughts, to get stuff together, to really think about what I wanted to talk about on stream. And that's okay. Because it's gonna have to do. But tomorrow should be a day that I get to actually spend a little bit of time for myself, thinking to myself and about stuff. Not a lot of stuff. It's a day that's already already looking like it's filling up. But I'll have some time. Anyway, and Friday I should have plenty of time. That'll depend on essays. Right now I don't have. Well, I've got one essay waiting for me. To one rough draft to look over. But aside from that, I'm actually caught up on schoolwork. This time of the semester, that's really good. I'm feeling pretty good about where I am so far as the semester. We've only got a few more weeks left, right? So right now, the 16-week semester is doing abortion, and next week is break. For the fall break. So that class, my 12-week class, get the whole week off. Well, kind of. There is some assigned reading, and there is a quiz that has like 5 questions. Usually my quizzes are between 10 and 20 questions. It depends on the topic. But you know, it's short week. There's only 2 days in the week technically, so I don't have a lot of stuff going on. With the 8-week, I didn't have a choice. They still have some assignments to do. I'll still have some work to do next week with regard to that, which is unfortunate. But some semesters are just really weird, and this is a weird one. The final draft for my 16-week, actually, and for my 12-week is due on Friday. So 2 days from today. Yeah, both of those classes are past the point where I'm doing rough drafts for them. It's my 8-week. Their final draft is due on the 5th, I want to say. Yeah. Their final draft is due on the 5th. And the last day of the semester is the 16th. So that gives me more than a week to do all of the essays and get the late submissions in. Because that's the other thing. It's like pulling teeth, is getting students to just submit their work, and to not use AI. It's if I could just complain for a little bit. One of the greatest difficulties in me doing my job right now, there's two big difficulties that have begun to prevent me from being able to do my job the way that I would like to. And one of those has to do with admissions. There's been some restructuring in how they handle some of the administrative stuff with regard to how registration deals with the having attended and non-attendance withdrawals. That it used to be a process that I was kind of party to, but I didn't have to really do much. Somebody would send an email to me, I send a response, and I'm done. I don't have to think about it again. But now I have to keep up with all of my students' absences and track. I mean, I do that anyways, but I need to send out notifications notifying the students that they are about to be removed from the course if they haven't submitted an assignment in 2 or 3 weeks. That's a typical thing. And then I have to file a bunch of I have to log into a whole separate system that I don't do any of my grading or any of my attendance. I've logged into a separate system and then file open a case. It's a process that I'm still getting practiced with, so I don't really know it that well. I have to open a case and I notify their academic advisor, and I'm supposed to formalize some kind of committee, or right, it used to be very hands-off for me, and now it's a very involved process for every single student. That misses 2 or 3 classes in a row, and some semesters, some classes, I might have 1 student. Some classes, I might have 8 students, and not just the first few weeks, but like in week 5 and week 7, that I'm still having to juggle all of this paperwork and use all of these extra things, and I'm just not used to that yet. So that's one thing. The other thing that's beginning to interfere with my ability to do my job is the students who are using AI, or my suspicion of them using AI. Case in point, the rough draft that I have waiting for me to grade right now is a rough draft that was submitted last week. Well, no, it was submitted, technically last week. It was submitted Sunday. So, on Monday, I saw that one of the programs that our college uses to check similarity. So if they're plagiarizing, that's what the similarity report is looking for. If they're copying and pasting something from Wikipedia, Turnitin is going to let me know. It finds any other sources, but it also has an AI detection tool. And the students' work came up as 100%, which is not a dead giveaway. It's not an obvious thing. Just because it says 100%, that doesn't necessarily mean that it is that all of it has been written by AI. Especially if you have a small word sample. For those of you who are not familiar, let me just walk you through the basics of this real fast. A sample of 600 words or so has a very low confidence. When the AI tracker checks those 600 words to see if it might have been generated by AI, 600 words is a very small sample. So anything under 600 words and Turnitin won't even give you any kind of score whatsoever. It has to be at least 600 words. And so at 800, the confidence increases to the point that Turnitin will stand by it. Anything below that, you get an asterisk where it says, well, maybe it is AI, we don't know. But after 800 words, that's the threshold where the confidence increases, and the AI detection tool will be like, yes, okay, this is or it is not, within a certain degree of confidence. And at 1,200 words, the confidence goes way up. Like it's like way more likely that the detection tool is going to detect accurately if somebody has used generative AI. And this student's submission was over 1,700 words. So it was a very large word sample, much larger than most of my essays, which is also kind of suspicious. So for those of you who don't know, the kind of things that I look for, right? The assignment is 2.5 to 4 pages. And I even have a caveat in there that I take off points for it being over 5 pages, which I don't. I never in the history of teaching at all have I ever taken off points for too much information or for too long of an essay. But there is something that I have in the assignment that is intended to discourage all of my students from writing 10-page papers, right? So between 2.5 to 4 pages is the expectation. There's a cap at 5, which I tell students all the time I don't care about. But one of the things that is usually a dead giveaway that somebody is using AI is if what you ask for is 1 paragraph and what they give you is 10 paragraphs, or if it's 2 pages and what they give you is 6 pages. And this student gave 6 pages. It was 6 pages of very dense, very content-rich stuff. There's almost no fluff. There's almost no flowery, I'm just filling up space. It's all very concise, which is also kind of a tell. Most students do a lot of BS, either because they don't have a lot of substance and are trying to fill it, or because they've been trained by their English teachers that BS is something that's expected in an academic essay. And I'm not sure why that's a thing that still exists, but it is. But so the student high word count, longer than ordinary submission, extremely content dense, and way more sources than most students use. The assignment asks for 3, 2 of which are academically credible. And the bare minimum of the assignment only asks that there's at least 1 credible source that counts, right? To get points in topic knowledge, you have to have at least 1 credible source. And the student had like 9 sources. So there's lots of alarm bells, lots of reason to be suspicious. But then the student reached out to me, and my first reservation in the first place, I see that there's a lot of text. I'll get to that in just a second. I'm not going to completely ignore you, but just want to finish this story. When I first started reading the essay, I didn't suspect. Especially because this is my student. I have discussion boards every week. So I engage with my students in the discussion boards every week. I get an idea of their canter, their style of speaking. And when I started reading the essay, I didn't have any suspicions at all. It wasn't until I got to about the third page, and I was like, this is starting to get really dense, really heavy. This is a lot more than I was expecting from the student. And it was starting to get a little bit formulaic, is the word that I would use to describe it. And so I went ahead and checked against the checker, and then it came up as 100%. And I was like, okay, let me just go ahead and contact the student, right? Let's see what's going on. So I spent probably an hour just not grading the essay at all, not talking with the student, not working through anything other than me trying to sleuth out whether or not I'm reading all of their discussion board posts, going through them, and I'm trying to look at the word choice, and I'm trying to look at the word order, and I don't have any kind of training on this, right? It's not like I've gone to classes on linguistics and the patterns of AI algorithms versus regular cantors. I mean, I've taken it upon myself to care about these things and to research it and to watch videos and to look at studies and reports and things. But I'm spending weekly. I'm spending hours and hours and hours more every single semester. It used to be that I used to not worry about it at all. And then I started to worry about it on a few students here and there. And now, at least half of the submissions that I get, I'm going, well, this really kind of could. I guess I'd better pull up all of the things, and then I'm just spending a lot of my time trying to figure out whether my students are cheating or not. And it doesn't seem like a good use of my time, but also it doesn't seem like something that I can ignore. Right? This is an important thing for lots of very important reasons, I think. Academic integrity, not being, but it's a very important reason. But it's also the benefit of the student, that the students need to understand that there's a reason for them to be engaging with the material and not turning it over to AI to just regurgitate some bullshit. The fucking point is to do the work. Right? And and I don't know, and I don't know how to know any other way than to spend all of this time, which is starting to become a lot of my job. Much of my time is now spent trying to figure out who's cheating. And that's just not fun. It's just not fun. Hey, welcome in, Apolitical Daddy. It's good to see you. You got here just in time at the end of my rant. All right, so let me take a drink of water because I was ranting for a little bit, and then I'll get to all of this from Kai Matara. Boy. Okay, so I was working in my revolutionary messaging article, then I realized perhaps a prelude to it would be beneficial, so I'm writing an article called Ghosts Exist, and you're holding one, okay? Using the argument that because a ghost is the residue of a life separate from itself, or estranged from itself, that the commodity, since it's a residue of the life labor of the worker, And because capitalism estranges the labor from the product through common fetishism, it therefore creates a ghost that haunts. Its haunting is at its apex through AI. People think they're feeling uncomfortable because they're being stolen from, but I think that uncomfortability is because, like a ghost separated from the body, it's the strange feeling that your life is happening somewhere else and you're just watching. Wow, that's a whole lot. Talk about dense ideas packed into a short amount of words. That's a whole lot of dense philosophical ideas that you're okay. So let's go to the therefore. Therefore, it creates a ghost that haunts. I'm guessing that you're referring to hauntology in general. Just Deleuzian, I think Deleuze comes up with the idea of hauntology. If not, then check that out, because that's kind of what you're that it sounds like that's what you're talking about. But let me go, and I was working with you're holding one, right? That's you're holding one, using the argument that because yeah, absolutely, you should try to understand them. That's what we're here for, Apolitical Daddy. You're holding one. Ghosts exist, you're holding one. Right, and there's lots of ways to hold. That's I'm kind of getting fixated on the holding. I guess that's going to be explained in the article, using the argument that because ghost is the residue, that the commodity, since it's a residue of the life labor of the worker. Okay, so you're talking about the commodity, any commodity, right? That a commodity in general is what I'm holding in my hand. And when I am holding that commodity in my hand, I am haunted by the life labor of the worker that I do or don't see, right? Do and don't. Do or don't see reflected in myself with regard to that life labor ghost. Because residue of the life labor of the worker, and because capitalism estranges the labor from the product through common fetishism, it therefore creates a ghost. It haunting at its apex through AI. People think they're feeling uncomfortable because they're being stolen from, but I think that uncomfortability is because, like a ghost separated from a body, it's the strange feeling that your life is happening somewhere else and that you're watching. I think that what I'm struggling with is that I like what's there and I'm trying to cram something else into it already. I'm having trouble with what's there because I'm already trying to cram more stuff into it. Because I feel like there's lots of ways that this could be expanded out. Lots. Well, okay, let's just take this a little bit slow. The fetishism part is, well, the fetishization of labor in general. We could probably pull up a video that would, So with fetishism, you probably haven't been here for many of the conversations that we've had about fetishism so far. So in general, it's something that it's a way that we mysticize something. Often it has an objectifying. I don't know how to approach this. I need to practice articulating this idea. This is something that I often don't get asked to explain very much. So we are continuing on the Anarch Summary Lecture series, or are we watching my journey into... Oh, I thought that was the next one in the series. I thought that we had finished the first few in the series. Because this is... Well, let me go back to this. Oh no, part 4 of that one is a modern anarchism. Maybe? It's hard to tell. Which YouTube has terrible organization when it comes to how the playlists are organized. Or maybe I've never been able to figure it out.
Hey, everyone.
Okay. Anarchist Praxis is part 4 in that series. Oh, there's more to those. Okay. I was looking at the wrong playlist earlier when I thought that we had watched them all already. So cool. We'll probably do that one instead, and finish on with this the summary lectures. I'd like to finish out the summary lectures. I'm glad that there's more because it felt like there was a lot more left to say. And there's a whole video on dual power structures, so that's going to be good. That's one of my favorite things to talk about that I don't get to talk about enough. I love the idea of dual power structures. Okay, so hard to explain to a normie. That's like the ghost theme, though, in the article. I bet it's used more clever than I can notice. Oh, I like the ghost theme. Oh, right, I gotcha. And it's not that you're a normie. It's a difficult concept to explain anyway. So the way that fetishism is often used in colloquial terms has to do with sexualization or some kind of what's the word for it? It's a sexual fascination, fixation or fascination. But in either case, that is a limited use of it that has its roots in psychology, that goes back to this other earlier use of the term, which it's again one of the ways that I typically explain it is religion itself is a form of fetishization. When we existed in a state where we could see states of affairs in the world, but we couldn't understand those states of affairs, like why are we dying? Why are we getting sick? Why is the world the way that it is, without any kind of answers? What we do is we invent modes of coping with the things that we don't understand by building narratives around them. And these narratives are often just purely imaginary. And they're not tied to a real working understanding of how states of affairs work. So there's another example that I give sometimes is with technology. You can use technology. You can log on to the internet and you can use Google. You don't actually understand, I would imagine, unless you are extremely well versed in technical programming and networking administration. You probably don't understand how all of that works, but you understand how to navigate it nonetheless. Despite the fact that you don't understand how the internet works, you can understand how to use it. And the mechanisms that your consciousness uses to be able to navigate the thing that you actually don't really understand is a form of fetishization. You invent these imaginary rules that help you understand and navigate the thing that you can't comprehend in a way that enables you to engage with it meaningfully. There is some objectifying that goes into it, right? So, and that's there's lots of stuff, right? We'll probably spend some time unpacking this idea in greater detail today, because there's a lot that goes along with it. There is some objectification that goes along with it. Well, but that's complicated too. And part of it is it. Well, I don't know. Let's. Hey, welcome in, Nova Rider. It's good to see you. Hello. How is life in the new Nazi Germany? It's awful. It's well, there have been some encouraging kind of turns in news, right? It seems like the Republican Party is no longer just going in lockstep behind Donald Trump in, okay, we're going to move on from the Epstein list stuff. And it seems like the Epstein list might end up mattering. Right, and I think I started to talk about this a little bit on my last stream. That I hope that it goes somewhere. I hope that at some point society goes, wait a minute, letting literal pedophiles run the entire world maybe isn't such a good idea. Maybe we ought to look into this and do something about this. Yeah, the MAGA movement is not in good shape right now. There's a lot of infighting and schisms. That's a word that I heard James from the internet use probably 20 times earlier this morning. The schisms going on in the Republican Party. Which is good. If and that's the thing. If Marjorie Taylor Greene can put on a parade and put on a big enough show that we can actually get some traction done, I'll get behind Marjorie Taylor Greene. Fuck it, man. I don't care. I mean, I'm not getting into a tent, any kind of big tent coalition with Marjorie Taylor Greene. She's an open transphobe. That's right. She's openly not okay with queer people in general. No, there's not going to be any coalitions, but I can see somebody calling out bullshit and appreciate somebody calling out bullshit because it needs to be called out. Yeah, Nick Fuentes is destroying it. And it's really kind of an interesting thing. I've been thinking about this, and I don't think a lot of about Nick Fuentes. It seems like somebody like Nick Fuentes would look at the states of affairs in the world and would understand that, right? You would understand that pushing your agenda in the way that you're pushing your agenda isn't actually platforming the Nazi ideas as well as you think that they're going to, right? Because they're not. The Nazi ideas are being picked up in these small internet circles where they are echo chambers, right? So and maybe that's what it is. Maybe Nick Fuentes is a too online person and sees these little pockets of echo chambers and believes that there's greater public sentiment for these openly white supremacist ideas. Because the more that these kinds of ideas get mainstreamed, the more that we actually get to talk about real fascism, right? The more that we actually get to have a real conversation with your Republican aunt and with your neighbors and with those other people that you ordinarily wouldn't be able to find common ground with, but those people recognize Nazi shit when they see Nazi shit, right? That there is a whole subset of these Republicans who are in openly Nazi channels, right? That have swastikas and are talking about how Hitler's awesome, right? Like that's too far. That's too far for even the far right white supremacist white Christian nationalist. It's too far. So I mean, I don't know. I don't know. Parliamentary politics are a mere distraction from us gaining true freedom and having a true cooperative society, and that's absolutely true, right? Whatever happens with politics and with Marjorie Taylor Greene, and it's not like pluralism is going to get us anywhere. But we might get some real accountability. That's more what I'm hoping with along those lines. I want to go back and read this. I like to use the example of a ghost town. A ghost town isn't haunted by spirits, but by absence. The buildings carry the labor and life of the people who build them, but they are gone. What remains is a trace of life estranged from its creator, a material ghost. I do like that too, Hayamatara, because I like the way that you phrased it, because it's not as though it is the residue of the thing itself. It's not the spirits that are lingering behind that make us uncomfortable with the ghost town. What makes us uncomfortable with the ghost town is us, right? We impart that thing, and it's because when we look at it, what we see reflected back is that absence. It is that lack. But oh yeah, so there's several ways that I think that we can expand this out. And I'll read yours in a moment, Nova Writer. There's so with this the haunting that we're talking about here, to use the example of a ghost town. And thanks for putting that in the chat again, Kaimatara. Sorry to make you repaste it. to repost it, but thank you for putting it in a second time so I will get to it. Yeah, my journey into anarchism is a separate thing, Kay. So what was the other thing that I wanted to further unpack? Okay, so, right. The commodity you're holding. Residue of the life labor. Right. So, I think that when you're talking about this, in the way that we look at AI, right, and we see people think they're feeling uncomfortable because they're being stolen from, but I think that uncomfortability is because, like a ghost, separated from a body, it's a strange feeling that your life is happening somewhere else and you're just watching. Okay, so rather than focusing on the AI, which is totally appropriate, and I think that is a good course, but I would go back further to earlier iterations that we see on the internet of doom scrolling, right? Or when people get sucked into TikTok, for example. One of the ways that people get sucked into TikTok is they'll see all of these people, and the people are making arts and crafts, and the people are building things, and the people are doing stuff. They're accomplishing. They're being productive. They're expanding their skills, and they are living their lives. And when people see that, there's this thing that happens with our ape brains. We see that other people are doing it, and we get a little bit of dopamine fix. And it's because this is supposed to inspire us to go out and do that, is how the brain chemistry is supposed to work with that. We see that thing that we want, and our brain goes a little bit of dopamine so that we can, right, but rather than us getting up and going and doing, we scroll to the next thing. And we see somebody else doing the doing, and then we get another little dopamine fix. And then we scroll, and we see somebody else doing the doing. And I think that there are a lot of people who are not living their lives at all, but are completely under the illusion that they live meaningful, fulfilled lives because they witness other people do them, and their brain is tricking them into thinking that they're doing fine. They're not. They're caught in a cycle of this internet addiction is what this leads to, where they constantly are looking for that dopamine fix, and the only way that they know how to get it is by logging on to TikTok or whatever platform that they usually platform. So I think that in a lot of ways, the internet itself has worked as a mirror that has been helping the human race better see itself. But rather than the human race being thoughtful and mindful about themselves and their relationship to their world, this mirror reflection has become real life, right? And people have taken it up, and they are living this detached lifestyle, this detached, alienated way that they believe is natural and normal, because that's the world that we've been given now. People don't generally have the financial freedom or the time freedom or the space freedom or the resource freedom to just go out and do the things that they see other people do on TikTok or whatever their things. And so they feel like they don't have any other options. Well, I have to watch other people do it. There's no point in me going out and trying to help people. I'm not a millionaire like Mr. Beast. I'll just sit here and go out and help people. And then my brain will trick me into thinking that I'm doing good too, because I'm supporting this person who is just grifting for their own well-being, for their own benefit. Okay, so I was talking for a while, and let's see what I missed. Okay. Under what conditions can a Democrat? Well, actually, let me. Because I wanted to actually, I should answer this. Yes. So living vicariously through external things. Yes. In worse than living vicarious through external things, right? We never get to grow or learn or develop our skills. Instead, rather, our brains fool us into thinking that we are learning and that we're gaining and that we're gathering skills, but we're not. We're engaged in a form of psychological masturbation. Actually, it's a way, right? In the same way that, because a video game is, for a lot of video games, the way that those video games are designed, it's a kind of psychological masturbation where you do the thing and the game rewards you. You do the thing and the game rewards you. And it's just this, it's this self-pleasing, this self-fulfilling activity that doesn't actually fulfill you beyond sitting there and watching the story. Right? It doesn't actually make your life materially better in any reasonable way. You have to step away from the video game. You know, you can learn things in a video game and then step away from the video game and apply those things in the real world, but you have to step away from the video game in order for it to cease to be a masturbatory activity. What are the things I want to cover on this stream? I thought that I had an idea, but it looks like that's going out the window. Well, I didn't really have an idea anyway. I kind of showed up hoping that it was just going to turn into this, so I'm happy. I'm just gonna sit here and keep talking with chat until y'all get bored and tell me to play the video. But I do need to get to Nova Writer's thing. Right, I don't want to let that go too long. Under what conditions can a democratically elected leader begin a transformation toward authoritarian rule? Hitler used democratic institutions to dismantle democracy. And to what extent do modern political figures such as Donald Trump reveal the same structural vulnerabilities in democratic systems, even if their contexts, goals, and outcomes differ dramatically? This is a really, really good question, Nova Writer. This is a really fantastic question. I'm actually gonna let's put this up here. Let's put me over here. We'll shelve Anarch for now, and then there we go. I thought that I had a thing. Okay. Hopefully this won't take too long. Will only take me a second to get this all worked. There we go. That'll do. That'll do, I think. Good. Under what conditions? See, and this is just a fantastic way to begin any kind of inquiry. Is trying to decide under what conditions. Well, Welcome in, TWP fan. I'll answer your question in just a moment. Welcome in. It's good to have you. Thanks for stopping in and dropping your question in chat. We'll get to that shortly. Under what conditions can a democratically elected leader begin a transformation towards authority similar to how Hitler used democratic institutions to dismantle democracy? So I think that the first thing that I would say in response to this is that we should not make the mistake of thinking about authoritarianism and democracy as necessarily different, necessarily distinct, mutually exclusive systems, because you can have democratic authoritarianism. There's a few major paradoxes that goes along with democracy. The first is how we get to a fair democratic process in the first place, which is in itself paradoxical. The other big problem that's come up over and over and over again is that when you give people the option of choosing to determine for themselves their own lives, they always seem to opt to give that, to turn that over to somebody else. So it is a tested phenomenon that when you give people the choice to determine for themselves, or to instead turn that responsibility over to somebody else, what people democratically choose is to give their power up and leave the responsibility of the state to somebody else. Leave the responsibility of determining how they ought to live their lives. They give that up democratically over and over and over again when in democratic systems. So there's certainly some kind of spectrum, right? And I don't think that we could even put the spectrum on, we could consider that spectrum to be two-dimensional, that we could put on a two-dimensional scale and put under a bell curve. I think that the distribution would be one of those over a landscape, right? Kinds of distributions, at least a three-dimensional distribution, that's what I mean, of different kinds of organizations where we have varying degrees of authoritarianism and varying degrees of democracy. So under what conditions can democratically elected leaders begin a transformation? Under any democratic conditions. Literally under all democratic conditions, we would have to be worried about authoritarianism in this way, in the exact way that we're seeing demonstrated. Is there a part of this that I didn't answer yet? Extent do modern political figures reveal the same structural vulnerabilities? Well, I'm not sure their contexts, goals, and outcomes differ that dramatically. It does and it doesn't. So, one of the difficulties of being a philosopher and having conversations with non-philosophers is that the way that I see the world is often very different than the way that other people see the world. And I see the world in patterns and frameworks. I'm a systemic philosopher. That's what my area of emphasis is in philosophy, is systemic philosophy. And systemic philosophy is concerned with the systems of truth and value, which undergird, which form the foundation underneath the base axioms that people build their ideals upon. So rather than seeing the world as a bunch of distinct philosophies or a bunch of distinct ideologies, I see the world in matter of frameworks. There are certain people who view the world through this kind of framework or this kind of framework, or and those are much broader. When it comes to understanding authoritarianism and when it comes to understanding fascism, they're really very simple, right? The faces look different, and the bodies might look different, but it's not really a different creature. It's the same thing. It's the same mechanisms. It's the same frameworks. It's the same arguments, usually against immigrants and people of color and queer people. It's usually actually quite predictable in the shape in which fascism and or authoritarianism manifest. Okay, so let me get to that new question. What do you think about the tech giants as they're going on full AI mode to replace jobs and make middle class vulnerable? I don't care about AI replacing jobs at all. And this is a privileged take, probably, but that's not at all my concern. AI taking over jobs, the only people for whom that really matters is art, and art is really something that is, we haven't had this conversation yet. Recently I've had a conversation with somebody who is an artist professionally, and the conversation that I had with this artist, I'm beginning to believe that they are right about the thing that we have been arguing back and forth about for a few months now. And their overall thesis is there is no such thing as art. The thing that we believe is people's artistic, spiritual expressions that they put into some kind of medium or format. It's all commodity. It's all commodity. Any kind of art or artistic expression that has existed since the advent of capitalism, it's all just propaganda. All of it. And the art industry, for the entirety of art history, has been a carefully curated and carefully maintained public image, right? The art industry itself, since the advent of capitalism, has taken on its own kind of shape, and what that shape is propaganda for capitalism. And literally everything that any artist makes, if they are making the art to get paid or making the art with the hopes that they will get paid, that artist is engaging in propaganda. Necessarily, in this, I've been arguing back and forth with this person for, like I said, for months, and arguing as hard as I can, and I'm beginning to think that their assertions are pretty on point, actually. So anyways, when it comes to replacing jobs is what technology is supposed to do, right? That's when it comes to the advancements of technology, when humans are trying to make the technology that we have currently, and we're trying to make that technology better, the better thing is that it's supposed to make our lives easier so that we have to do less labor. That should be the point of technology, is so that we do the less labor. The problem is that we have a system in which people's basic needs are behind paywalls, right? So we have to invent jobs for people to have. Otherwise, they'll starve. And the problem isn't a lack of jobs. The problem is not a lack of jobs. The problem is a system in which people's basic needs are behind a paywall. And that's what we should be focused on. And AI preventing people from waking up to class consciousness. That's what I would be more concerned with there. Oh yeah, we all know that AI is a bubble. I mean, AI is a bubble. And I can't believe that it was ever any kind of controversy. If anybody thought that AI was a boom, I'm sorry. That's foolish. It was foolish. The whole thing has been bullshit from the beginning. It's not real AI. That's the really frustrating thing about it, is it's the Google search engine software that you have been using for like 4 years has just been rebranded and retooled a little bit, just reprogrammed and retooled a little bit, and people believe it's fucking artificial intelligence. There's nothing new. There's nothing that has been new in AI that the public has been aware of in decades. It's the same thing. All of these models are all just, it's a matter of information buildup, right? That's when people thought that there was some kind of AI boom. What it was is AI itself was amassing enough of an information bank to make itself look like it was going to be able to be a self-sustaining knowledge creation, but it can't. It can't think outside of the box. AI can't think outside of the box. It can't even recognize that there's a box. Anyways. Yeah, democratic authoritarianism is just a republic. Absolutely. 100%, Jane. I don't think language models have improved that much since ChatGPT dropped. No, not really. Even though so much money. Well, not just money, right? The ecological costs of AI are already catastrophic and are growing literally exponentially, right? Like, think about that. The fact that it's already AI as of right now has already created a nearly insurmountable ecological problem just in itself. Not to mention all of the other ways that, like Bitcoin and the internet itself and other ways that we have been ecologically irresponsible. Just AI itself is an existential threat in its ecological footprint, and becoming more so every day. No, I'm not close to a normal worldview at all. No. Okay. We'll come back and a waxing philosophical deterministic arc. I mean, I believe that the determinism is a large part of our existence. I believe that we have some modicum of free will. But so far as the things that we can, I think that we are largely determined. We've talked about that before, though. So many fearmonger on social media will AI do that and do this and only rich survive? Sure. Yeah, well, and I don't think that I don't know. It's not going to be at all that only the rich are going to survive. That idea it's when I see movies, there was the movie where the end of the world was coming and we knew about it, but then they built the ark and then people were trying to get the tickets to get on the ark, the thing that was going to save, the people or whatever. Like, look, that shit ain't happening. That all of the rich people are going to be able to pay armies enough when those armies are faced with annihilation tomorrow, right? Those armies are not going to support those rich people and let those people get into their bunkers, and that it will not be the case that the rich survive and all of us plebes end up dead. That's not going to be. That's not even a reality. Oh yeah, can we get on to the video? And there we go. I was just waiting for somebody to say that. Yeah, let's switch our gears. Do you think you understand the normal person better or worse than a person who is not into philosophy? That's a loaded question that I can't really answer well, Apolitical Daddy. Not without becoming a giant twat. Well, I shouldn't use gendered language. There's no reason to use gendered language, or to use, that language. But anyways, what I was trying to say is, where do you understand the normal person better or worse than a person? That's me, putting myself up on a pedestal. That's what I was trying to. That's what I meant to say. In either way that I answer that question, I'm putting myself on a pedestal, because I am not in a position to understand others, whether they're intelligent or whether they make good decisions, or and that's something that I have to constantly remind myself, because I judge, right? Of course, we have those thoughts where we look at people's lives and we look at what people do and we say to ourselves, well, I wouldn't do that. And you don't ever know, right? You really don't know the context of their situation, no matter who it is, no matter how well informed you think you are or how well you think you know them. You really don't. You don't know what it is to be them or to live their life or to have their lived experiences. So, and I just have to try to remain humble, in that regard as best I can. Under capitalism, technology displaces the worker rather than replaces the worker, right? Because surplus value can only be generated by living labor, and its absence would be the end of capitalism. Right, and that's something that we have talked about before. It won't be the case that AI automates us all out of jobs. Jobs are necessary to keep us in line. The ruling class will not let us not have jobs, right? So that's not even a concern. Zero concern about AI taking people's jobs. Zero concern about that. I'll ask ChatGPT how to solve the issues, right? Yeah. With climate change. It's funny. That's something. It's a joke that comes up a lot in the classroom. That students are kind of cluing into that many students do use ChatGPT to try and answer their problems, and then sometimes that's what they're trying to do. Or, you know, if they're writing an essay about the dangers of AI, or how AI is irresponsible, or how AI is not good for students, that's another thing that it apparently happens all the time. Good. So I'm on the wrong video. Let's go to the video. I want to finish up the
Hey everyone,
the summary lecture
Anarch
series.
here.
So let's get to this. Finish wrapping it up, and then we'll go from there. I might make it a short stream. I've already been streaming an hour. It's going to take me more than an hour to get through this, but we'll see where we are after we get through the video.
And this is another episode of Anarch Abridged. And the topic of today's episode is going to be, how do we build an anarchist revolution? This video is actually going to be pulling from my other video, Constructing the Revolution, as well as some of the features from A Modern Anarchism Part 3, titled Revolution. However, before we get started, I just want to make an announcement about my Patreon. From here on out, I'm going to be donating 5% of the proceeds of my Patreon to the group Cooperation Tulsa, and that will be taking place every single month. So just know, if you become a patron, not only do you get access to the Anarch Discord server, and you get to assist me in spending more time developing videos for this channel, but you'll also be contributing directly to a revolutionary, communalist, social ecologist group here in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
I don't mind playing this out and just letting him do it, a little bit of self-promotion and advertisement for this group, which seems like it's pretty based.
So what is Cooperation Tulsa? Well, Cooperation Tulsa is a group that was developed during the George Floyd protests, and which is part of the Symbiosis Federation here in the United States. And our first few projects were focused around creating community gardens at historically black churches in the Greenwood district. After this, we actually opened a community center, which was a hub for a bunch of local activity where we did teach-ins, and we had a tool library and all kinds of other things, even though we were not able to keep that community center open. And during that period of time we were developing those community gardens, we were actually donated a 2.5 acre plot of land, which we call Flat Rock. When we first got Flat Rock, it was actually a dumping site, and it took us the entire first year just to get it cleaned up. Now, we are developing all kinds of things out at Flat Rock. We are going to be creating more of these community gardens out there, and we're going to be automating as much of this as possible. We are going to be creating compost. We are going to be creating, hopefully, more community spaces. And using this land as our basis, we are going to be reaching out and trying to create popular assemblies in the areas around Flat Rock. But I won't go on too much longer about Cooperation Tulsa. I know that's not why you're here. However, it is pretty directly related to the topic of this video, which is, how do you actually build a revolution? And I should be specific that this video probably won't go into every single aspect of how to build a revolution, but what it will do is tell you what kinds of social structures you need to build in order to make something that can later turn into a social revolution. Because in the previous videos, we laid out how power structures work, and we laid out what anarchy looks like, but we didn't really talk about how you might go from here to there. That is what this video is going to be about, and possibly the next video, depending on how far we get into this. So let's jump into it. So you may remember this concept of means-ends unity from the previous videos in this lecture series. And this concept of means-ends unity is very important in understanding the anarchist revolutionary praxis. Remember, means ends unity says that we can't create bodies which are contrary to our desired ends and hope to ever actually achieve those ends. Instead, what we have to do is we have to endeavor to create bodies which are as similar to our ends as is conceivably possible within our current conditions. So this leads us to a key principle within anarchism, and that is direct action. So what is direct action? Well, direct action is essentially acting without intermediates. It is the idea that we cannot trust to some other power structure to do the work for us. We're not going to go and petition the government for our needs. We are not going to trust some non-profit to solve our problems. Instead, direct action says that we should act directly in the world in order to solve those problems. The reason I bring this up right after means ends unity is because this is a perfect example of means ends unity in action. If we want to create a society wherein our concerted actions, our cooperation within organizational structures is supposed to be what manages and administrates society, then obviously we have to do that in the here and now. We can't expect these enemy structures to give us the world that we would like to see. This means that anarchists oppose entryism, electoralism, and begging for reforms from power structures. Instead, what anarchists say is that if we want to get anything from those hierarchical power structures, we have to create these forms of leverage which are going to force that power structure into giving us what we want. And if that power structure refuses to give us what we want, we will begin to do it ourselves. Instead of relying on the government to give us housing, we should be able to provide housing for our people. Instead of relying on some non-profit to feed us, we should instead try to feed ourselves. And obviously, this is a tall order. Creating alternative structures is not easy, and it takes lots of time. So this reminds me of a quote by David Graeber, and David Graeber says, "Protest is like begging the powers that be to dig a well, whereas direct action is digging the well and daring them to stop you." Once you understand this concept of direct action, I think you'll find that a lot of what anarchists do makes a lot more sense. Because we cannot
So what's being alluded to is the establishment of dual state power structures. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about this because in 2 videos, they're going to have a whole video on just that. But that's where we're going. That's the roadmap. The idea is that, right, and this is something that I've talked about when it comes to government, what it does as an emergent power. What government does is it makes itself indispensable in all of your everyday life affairs. Everything that you need, all those things you need from the state, from the government. If you need land, if you need permits, which you do, right? And that's part of the thing. The state requires that you jump through these hoops, and the state makes you jump through these hoops, so the state always remains necessary for all of your everything. That's how the state operates as a power, is it first and foremost makes itself indispensable for that thing that you're trying to do. And then, as an emergent power, in the way that we think about Foucault's power structure, I can't remember the language that he used now, but we can expect it to seek out and eradicate any mechanism which allows people to secure any kind of liberty outside of the state. That's the what we see with the Black Panthers is a perfect example. That the first thing that the Black Panther Party did was keep police out of their neighborhoods, so their neighborhoods would actually be safe. And then they began to feed people, and then they took care of everybody's rent, and then they began educating everybody, right? And the state could not have anybody else doing that. It cannot afford for people to realize that they can take it upon themselves to just build their own power structures. The state cannot allow that. So later we're going to have a lot longer conversation about how we go about building dual state power structures so that we can feed ourselves and house ourselves, and mechanisms for access to health care, and networks for distribution for medicines and things like that, right? Those are power structures we need to build, but we need to figure out how we can build them alongside a state that is, anytime we do anything to offer liberty, that state will seek us out to eradicate us for doing that. Yeah, that state wants to maintain a monopoly on decision making, right? For it to maintain its necessity, right? It has to systematically eradicate any other mechanisms by which you can be free or make decisions for yourself. Absolutely.
Rely on any of these hierarchical power structures to give us these necessary handouts, this means that we have to intervene directly to get things done. So this also brings us to what I think is another really important concept, and that is anarchism has both a constructive and a deconstructive aspect. The anarchist does not only seek to deconstruct hierarchical power structures, they also seek to construct horizontal power structures. And I think this latter part is best embodied in this concept of prefiguration. Prefiguration is often stated as building the new in the shell of the old. And surprisingly, a lot of people don't really know what I mean when I say that, so I'll go into a little more detail. First, I'll just return us to what I said a moment ago about direct action. So obviously, our direct action, if what we seek to do is construct our power from the bottom up, that means that we have to actively construct that power. We can't just rely on protests and demonstrations and various forms of militancy. Instead, we have to carefully go about crafting these horizontal power structures that we wish to see characterize the future world. So this sort of brings us back to what I talked about in the first part of this lecture series when I discussed the 4 fields of power structures. Our work is to create horizontal power structures in all 4 of those fields that I discussed. This means that we need to change people's individual and ideological conditioning. We need to change the way that people interpersonally interact with one another. We need to construct new social structures which embody our horizontal values. And we need to develop environmental structures, that is to say, places that we dwell in this world that are characterized by horizontal management. Building all of these structures in the here and now is prefiguration. We're trying to get those structures to match the description I gave of anarchy in the previous part as...
Right. Note, right, when we say prefiguration, we always mean 2 things. Both of 2 things. When we are talking about prefiguration, what we mean is we are doing things that build power structures in the world by making ourselves the kinds of people that build those kinds of networks and power structures, right? We have to make ourselves into the kind of people that can build those kinds of power structures so that such things can manifest in physical space, in time, in a time and place, right? We have to become the kinds of people that provide for those material conditions, right? with Nova Writer's question earlier, the first thing that they began asking the question with is, what are the necessary conditions, right? When you're seeking out the necessary conditions, this is transcendentalism, right? And the necessary conditions for building real change in the world start with you. But it's not just you looking in the mirror. It's you going out to build those power structures. You going out to network with people and to work with people and to meet people and to engage with these ideas practically. Right? And it's always both. When we're talking about prefiguration, we are creating the kind of world that we want to create by becoming the kind of people that we want to, that need to be in that world for that world to exist, right? So it's always both, necessarily always both at the same time.
Much as is conceivably possible. And of course, I need to emphasize this caveat, the as much as is conceivably possible part of what I just said. Because the truth is, we can't create perfectly these bodies that will characterize a future world within the world we currently have. Because all of those power structures which surround us are preventing us from creating these alternative power structures. When we create horizontal power structures, they are constantly at war with hierarchical power structures, whether we want them to be or not. And so, even though in an anarchy, all structures might be characterized by a sort of baseline solidarity, the structures that we create can't take for granted that all of the structures surrounding them will practice proper solidarity. So what we have to do is we have to create bodies which are capable of going into conflict with hierarchical power without sacrificing their basic principles. These bodies then have to take into account all of the different sorts of hierarchical power that exists in society and ask ourselves how we can go about developing the four fields of our power structure to overcome those hierarchies. This means that we have to go from capitalism to socialism, from white supremacy to racial diversity, from patriarchy to gender equity, from ableism to disability justice, from gerontocracy to youth liberation, from transphobia to bodily autonomy, from xenophobia to humanism, from speciesism to animal liberation, from reductionism to holism, from hierarchical society to horizontal society. This is why it is so incredibly important that our anarchism is intersectional. And this is something that I've sort of left out in this lecture series, but which I probably should have mentioned earlier on, and that is the anarchism that I promote is not an economically reductionist anarchism. That is to say, it does not only focus on being anti-capitalist, it's also focused on dismantling all forms of hierarchical power. And because it believes holistically in prefiguration, it recognizes that none of those can be left to wait for a post-revolutionary society. What we've seen is that when anarchists conceive that some of these issues have to wait, that instead they just never really get dealt with, and they instead act as a sort of poison within the movement that causes it to backslide into forms of hierarchy which it was previously trying to destroy. Anarchists have to
That's your liberalism talking, right? That's what he's calling out right there, is because that's exactly what happens is there's that backsliding when people are unwilling to commit all of the way, that we end up with these kinds of backsliding.
Recognize that if they are going to fight against hierarchical power, this requires an intersectional approach. So what do I actually mean by intersectionality? Because this has become a sort of buzzword within our communities. Intersectionality is the concept that all different forms of oppression have various forms of intersections which themselves sort of reconstitute what those people experience at those intersections. So this is to say, not every black person is going to experience the same form of oppression. Instead, they might experience what it's like to uniquely be a black woman.
Absolutely, Matt. Well said. And welcome in. It's great to see you. Hope you're doing well today.
Or a black indigenous woman, or a black homosexual indigenous woman. All of these together don't just stack on top of each other and sort of additively create some new oppression, but instead it sort of creates a uniquely different form of oppression. This form of patriarchal dominance is now mediated through anti-blackness. This homophobic conception is now also imbued with the sort of homophobia of the black community at the same time as it is imbued with patriarchal dominance, and so on. This is just one example I'm giving, but you can see that this form of analysis, it gives us an understanding of how all of these different oppressions uniquely manifest themselves for each given person. This also means we can't do a sort of oppression Olympics where we just rank one oppression above another. What we have to do instead is understand how every person's oppression affects them uniquely based on how they lie at the intersections of various oppressions. This is also important because it helps us understand which
It's a little bit nitpicky. It's because it's my particular wheelhouse, probably, but they're. I'll say it this way. I'll say it this way. Let's talk about it this way. Standpoint theory is good and valuable. And it's not the same thing as intersectionality or intersectionality theory, which is also good and valuable. These two things often get mistaken as kind of the same. They kind of get rolled up into the same academic conversations. And this has to do with a few particular intellectuals who spent a decade or so muddying the waters with regard to the conversations around intersectionality and standpoint theory. It's something that I covered on my stream several years ago. I'm not at all surprised to hear some of the language from standpoint theory in an explanation of intersectionality, but I should try to clarify a little bit that with intersectionality, we are concerned with the intersections of oppression and how those intersecting forms of oppression compound. Absolutely. When we are interested in particular viewpoints because those particular viewpoints are particularly valuable for understanding oppressive systems and how the people oppressed by those systems are oppressed by those systems, then we would appeal to standpoint theory, which is not the same thing as intersectionality. That they are two different approaches at looking at the problem, and they have large systemic differences. I'm not splitting hairs here to be pedantic. There are very important systemic differences in how they are structured and the kinds of ends that they are interested in and the kinds of frameworks that they use to understand those ends. So just bringing up the fact that there should be a caveat here for we were talking about intersectionality. We crossed over into a brief discussion about standpoint theory without talking about what it was, right? And then, right, we're going to use these theories together, which you can, excuse me, you can absolutely use them together. But they are distinct philosophical frameworks with important differences. Right. We'll just leave it at that. Oh, I can give a TLDR on standpoint theory. Well, I mean, I really just did. That's really kind of it. Now I'm an argumentative intersectional leftist. Good. Me too. Marx, I always have the problem that I want the system to create enough value to help people distribute the wealth. That's why I like socialism. But if communism/anarchism could make people's material conditions better under socialism, I am for it. Right, yeah. And that's the thing. We're all kind of on the same page with our ends, right? But we've talked about this a little bit, apolitical daddy, but not a whole lot. And this is mainly my beef with socialism, is because of the means ends relationship. If we appeal to the government to solve our problems, the government will solve the problems how they see fit, i.e., they will assume the responsibility of always from now on being necessary in solving this problem. And that's a necessary thing that the state is always going to do. Powers in general protect and insulate themselves, or those powers cease to exist. So there's a tautology here, but it's not a circular logic tautology. It is a tautology because it's categorically true that powers which protect and insulate themselves persist. Powers which do not protect and insulate themselves do not. So there is a tautology there, but it's not circular logic. If that makes sense. Oh, and Matt, if my TLDR on standpoint theory is insufficient, if there's still more that is not clear to you about the differences or what it is specifically, then let me know and I'll keep talking about it. Okay. Yeah, okay. Okay, I see what you responded to. Okay. More than liberal, at least, but I'm so tired of them doing very little nowadays while bragging about a lot. Unlike anarchists or leftists, left comms, we had successful revolutions. Okay, what part did you play in that? Well, none, but I'm on their team, therefore I can take credit for it and use it as bragging rights against other revolutionaries, right? Proximity frustrates me. If you want to take credit for others' praxis, you are approximating others' revolutionary praxis just for the feeling of superiority. Taking credit for others' labor is what capitalists do, right? I think that there's also that same kind of thing. The comment before, I think, kind of taps into this too, right? Where we see ourselves as playing on the team, and in the same kind of disassociated, schizophrenic, alienated way that a sports fan gets all excited about their sports team, even though that sports fan doesn't do anything to contribute to the success, right? And doesn't have any reason to celebrate the successes other than their own this association that they've made. And so it's not the real deal. It's also a kind of ghost, in a way, I think. Main reason I became a believer, probably main reason I became a believer in socialism is that I think socialist democracy will fail in keeping peace. Yes, social democracy will fail in keeping peace. Social democracy will probably fail us in every regard possible. And it's and a lot of this has to do with us giving authority to the state to make our decisions for us and determine for us what our freedoms are and should be, right? Already we're off on the wrong foot. But also the problems that we talked about with Nova Writer's comment about democracy and authoritarianism. Democracy is completely compatible. Completely 100% compatible with authoritarianism. And generally trends toward that. In fact, I think at this point, historically, we can begin to make this almost a correlation that democracies, right, representative democracies especially, have a tendency to trend toward fascism over time. Right? I think that we are getting to a point in our history where we can start to look back and start to say, okay, where are the exceptions? Right? Okay, where are we finding the outliers to this, where these civilizations are not trending towards this this way? Just don't trust we'll get all the way to communism in my lifetime. Oh, I don't think so either. And that's and this is and I don't think this is why you are saying this, Matt, at all. But there's an attitude that has always prevailed, probably, for as long back in history as I'm aware of. But there's this attitude that has prevailed where people don't want to plant the fruit tree. And they don't want to plant the fruit tree because they expect that they won't get to reap the rewards of the fruit in their lifetime. And we, as a people, need to start to understand that if you want fruit, you need to plant trees that you are not going to get fruit from. And you might not ever get fruit, but if that's the world that you want, you need to do things to make that. Even if you don't get to enjoy those in your lifetime. And again, I don't think that's why you were saying it, but that's an attitude that people do. They see, they recognize the impossibility. This is part of capitalism realism, right? People see the impossibility. They see that there's right. We've talked about Marx's utopian vision of the future, the idealism that Marxism is driving us toward in their lack of materialism in some of Marx's ideas, right? That there's this utopian idea that we're supposed to be driving toward. I lost my thought mid-thought. What happened? Driving towards the utopia. Man, I just lost that thought entirely. Just brain empty. Whoops. Sorry, y'all. I was trying to get it back, but I think I've just lost. Only horizontalism can achieve social/communism. Yes. Yes. In praxis and in our prefiguration, all day, every day. Yes, Jane, 100%. So we'll aim at communism, work on making the transition equitable and dismantling capitalism, but I don't expect statelessness before I'm 100. Right. Well, I mean, to be honest, Matt, I think that we're decades, generations away from even a real socialism. I think that we might be 3 or 4 generations away from actually achieving materially. I hope I'm wrong, but that's kind of what I think. You're saying we are parasocial? Yes. My representative democracy was always fascist? Yes. He thinks my representative democracy was always fascist? Yes. And that's really, and that's, though, yes and no, right? We have to be a little bit more nuanced about it than that. We don't need to get a lot more nuanced, right? Because it is true. But there is some nuance there, right? There are degrees of to which our societies are fascist. And that's something to really consider, is that, like, keep in mind, if you live in the United States and you live in a place where you don't have access to abortion, you live in a fascist, necessarily, that is a fascist state. By definition, that is a state that is willing for you to die, to maintain the oneness, to maintain the integrity of the cultural identity, which is so fragile, which is so flaccid, which is so in need of defense, that it must murder you. It must murder you in defense of itself. And that's the society that we live in. And have, people just accept it. They are raised in a place and in a culture and an idea where it is okay for the government to restrict people's bodily autonomy to the point of death. That's fucking fascism. I mean, state executions. We are just doing it not at the gallows. We're doing it in hospitals, or in the parking lots of hospitals. Because the medical staff will just kick them out, rather than giving them the medical care that they need. That's where we have been. We live in a fascist society that does fascist things, that is willing to sacrifice the people for its own integrity. That's what we have always lived with. And there are no exceptions. Right? We haven't really talked much about necropolitics yet. That there exists no state right now which does not knowingly allow people to die. No state in the globe, anywhere in the world, no state exists without knowingly allowing people to die on purpose, knowing that those people are going to die, and choosing on purpose to not do anything about those people dying. This is called necropolitics. It's the mechanisms by which societies choose how to allocate their resources, such that societies choose to allocate their resources to certain groups of people and then strategically deny them to other groups of people on fucking purpose. By design. Necropolitics is something that is practiced by literally every state that has ever existed in the history of states. Knowingly letting their people die on purpose to achieve their ends and their gains and their maintaining their hierarchies. It will take generations of education to get rid of Nazism. Yes. Yes. And this something that we don't talk about enough on the left is gulags, right? And with regard to gulags, there's a lot of rough history there, and there's a lot of things that leftists probably ought to be more aware of with regards to the history of them and the kinds of impacts that they have had on people. Right there, point in case, or case in point, I've had an interaction with somebody this year who, I made something that I thought was, cute and funny, and it ended up not being cute and funny to somebody in a particular situation because they still have generational trauma that they are dealing with from their grandparents having been in gulags. So it is a real thing that still is something that the left needs to be a little bit better about knowing and about navigating. But we also have to have real conversations about what we're going to do about generations of white supremacists. Because we can't just kill them, right? That's the fascist thing to do. But how do we go about re-educating people who are so indoctrinated, who believe that those things are fundamental about nature itself? We're not just combating ideologies, right? It's not just some belief that I have, like maybe climate change is something that's real. I don't know. I've got an opinion on it, right? No, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about axioms that people use precognitive judgment to make determinations and discriminate about states of affairs in the world, right? It's baked into how they understand the world. It's much more than just an idea that they have. It's a faculty of their apprehension in the same way that you understand time and the same way that you understand how to do maths. They understand that racist viewpoint as a mechanism by which they navigate the world. It's a necessary thing for them. It's indivorceable. An essential part of their of them. I can't say it in anymore. Necropolitics, that really fits the ghost narrative, huh? Yeah, there you go. Absolutely, that's going to be a good tie-in. We will get back to the video, Jane. I'm sorry. This has been a much longer tangent than I expected it was going to be. I thought it was going to be real quick, but yes, subjugating Nazis just helps them grow. That's something that I think is also true, right? When we go to war with those kinds of ideologies, we give those ideologies fuel with which to dig in their heels and to indoctrinate younger generations. Is generally how that plays out. So. Yeah, and meet their basic needs. Can't stress that enough. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's exactly right. It's normalization. That's the term that is being picked up now in academia. Is normalization. It's getting the predominant culture to see not predominant culture, right? Just to see that those people fucking exist, and right, and that they are people too, and that they have dreams and goals and aspirations, and that their dreams and goals and aspirations are really quite like yours, right? There's this humanizing thing in normalization that goes on. Yeah. Good.
constituencies may have a sort of baseline militancy by way of their prevailing oppression by various power structures. Those who are multiply marginalized are generally going to be the people that you want to organize together to overthrow the hierarchies in their lives. But it's not as simple as the liberals make it out to be, such that all they seem to really care about is changing people's ideology and their interpersonal bigotry. That is to say, instead of being against white supremacy, they're against racism. Instead of being against patriarchy, they're against sexism. They're not trying to dismantle the structures that lead to those problems. Instead, they're trying to deal with how they manifest themselves in an interpersonal sense, with people exhibiting their bigoted opinions vocally in interaction with other people. The anarchist instead has to have a conception of how social structures such as patriarchy and white supremacy and capitalism are what actually bolster all of these harmful aspects. This means that we have to create alternative social structures, and that's what I'm going to be focusing on for the rest of this video. That is to say, what kinds of social structures can we construct that might actually be able to fight back against these forms of social structural intersectional oppression? In my video, Constructing the Revolution, I say that this can be kind of split up into 4 pillars of prefiguration. These 4 pillars.
Yeah, I want to back that up to get the 4 pillars of the prefiguration. But I was going to say, so it's libs used to be okay with racism. They still are, and it's not about whether it's explicit. To me, it seems to be that the only real shift with liberals and how they understand racism is it used to be the case that liberals saw racism as something that they benefited from as a part of the status quo that they could speak out against, knowing that it wasn't going to do any good, right? And at some point, there was a little bit of cultural shift where there is actually a drive now to push systemic change. So you have some liberals now who are avoiding talking about racism because it will undermine their systemic advantage. But the other liberals don't see talking about it in the same kinds of way as being advantageous to them. Because there's not the same kind of benefit. They could do the lip service before, virtue signal, and not have to worry about it. But now they'd have to worry about actually getting embroiled in the conflicts and the conversations and having a stake in it, so most of them just really avoid it. Period. Eat the libs? You wrote a song about... Oh, right. Right. Oh, right. Nina Simone. Okay, yeah. Yeah, liberal virtue signaling my ass. Right.
Are councils, economics, defense, and intelligence. So I'm going to cover each of these now and tell you what I mean by each of those pillars. In my work, Constructing the Revolution, I start the section on councils by saying, when I use the word council, I'm referring to a horizontal, freely associated, directly democratic body, which is composed of the people from some particular region, interest, identity, or profession. In these councils, all proposals are created and brought to a vote by the members, not some narrow leadership. And if the council needs to delegate someone to carry out a task, that delegation is temporary and able to be revoked by a simple majority at any time. So you'll notice that in this definition, I am advocating formal structure. I'm not just saying that we should all come together and sort of haphazardly make decisions. Instead, I'm advocating that we create formal methodologies by which we can make those decisions. I should also note that aspect about them being able to be focused around a region or an identity or a specific cause. This is important because it allows us to embody that principle of autonomy that we discussed in the last part of this video series. It's not bad for various kinds of councils to be created, even within a larger council. It may be, for example, that you want to create a sort of municipal council, a council that tries to bring together as many people as possible within a municipality and get them to make decisions together about how they will manage their own lives. So, using Cooperation Tulsa as an example, Cooperation Tulsa is itself a council body. In Cooperation Tulsa, we make all of our decisions through a directly democratic process where everyone is involved and there is no form of structural hierarchical power. Instead, anyone can bring a proposal to the floor and then it will be voted on by consensus. If there is any form...
Nice, Apolitical Daddy. That's awesome. Good job. Getting people to move further left is always a win. That's really fantastic.
Form of delegation, that is to say, if anybody is supposed to carry out a task uniquely, that person can have that delegation revoked at the whim of the people within the group. However, with bylaws of Cooperation Tulsa, we even suggest that there should be a women's council and an indigenous people's council and a black people's council. All of these are useful in balancing the needs of people within the greater body of Cooperation Tulsa. And that's only the internal aspect. In the external aspect, in every project that Cooperation Tulsa develops, we try to establish a sort of directly democratic body which lies over that project, and by which the people that are involved in that project might come together and make decisions about how it will be managed in the future. In the near future, for example, Cooperation Tulsa seeks to create popular assemblies, which are going to be located in people's neighborhoods or city blocks, and which will help people come together and make decisions as one of those pertinent groups about the things that are affecting them and how they might come forth to struggle against the problems that they have. Councils of the sort that I'm describing here are incredibly important. In fact, I would say they are integral to any successful revolutionary movement. Unless you create a variety of these sorts of horizontal council structures, you are not going to be prepared to organize and coordinate a complex society, because it has to be understood. These horizontal power structures are meant to expand, assume more and more people, more and more economic resources, such that they come to be a threat to hierarchical power structures. That means we want to start with the formality of the council in everything that we do, so that we are prepared to take this formality and apply it to the circumstances that we encounter. This is doubly important because this prepares us for rupture. What's been found is that if anarchists don't create these bodies ahead of time, then they are forced to create them on the spot after a rupture arrives. But the strength of creating them ahead of time is that when the rupture arrives, we've already been managing ourselves horizontally for years or even decades, possibly. This means that we won't be caught off guard by success, and we won't be forced to scramble to put something together that will allow us to coordinate large-scale resources that we may get our hands on. Next is economics. So,
good. At the end of that pillar and on the way into the next one is a good spot for me to pause it. But see, I get that, Apolitical Daddy. That there's a naivety that goes along with thinking anything but capitalism can work. The pushback that I would have to that is, why would anyone assume that continuing to do the things that we have been doing are going to produce anything different other than the same awful shit that we have now? Things are bad and getting worse. And have been trending that way for a very long time. Capitalism has never worked. Right? Capitalism isn't working and hasn't worked, has never worked, or rather, the only time capitalism has been able to successfully maintain itself is through fascism or by establishing socialist networks to maintain itself. That's the other paradox and the other reason why democratic socialism is not a good thing for us or anyone, because social democracy is what is currently maintaining capitalism from succumbing to all of the internally antagonistic contradictions within the capitalist system. It requires the heel to use force, and it requires a social network apparatus that is socialism, is socialist in its design, in that it cares enough for the people, for enough of the people, that enough of those people survive to continue to be the working force. Right? That's what capitalism needs to maintain itself. It's not working. It's clunking by with the use of force on one foot and the use of socialist mechanisms on the other to maintain its workforce so that it can sustain itself. Command is still a cooldown, that's right. Trash Nomancer, welcome in. I hope you're doing well. Other person's fault. They took my money and my job and my vote and even my flannel socks right out of my drawer or dryer. Yeah, it's always the other person's fault, right? But this is capping off the end of that conversation that we're talking about councils and organization. Well, I just want to remind everybody that this is one of the books that I'm getting to. This is going to be probably the one that I read right after I finish Between Past and Future, which I am making progress on, slowly but surely. I've had to restart the book 3 times because there have been long pauses between times when I've been able to read, but now I think I'm getting into a good spot where I'm going to be able to trudge through section at a time and make progress on that, because it's a tough read. It's been a tough read. For somebody that reads dense philosophy for fun, for me to call something a dense read, I'm telling you, it's the first chapter of the book is really not that bad. It's kind of a breeze. It was very enjoyable, very engaging. But once you get into the actual meat of the work, it's just immediately so dense. But it's good. It's fantastic. Anyways, I'll talk more about Hannah Arendt later. Let's get back to the video.
So I've separated economics because it's a big sphere and it includes all kinds of things. But I think some of the most important things it probably includes is cooperatives, unions, community land trusts, time banks, mutual aid and direct distribution support. Each of these are examples of economic bodies. These are those bodies which allow us to wage war against capitalism without direct violent militancy. On each of these fronts, as we push forward, we successfully push back how much of society that capitalism controls. And I mentioned that we should both develop cooperatives and unions because it's incredibly important that we not only develop our own autonomous power in the form of cooperatives and community land trusts, but also that we fight on the enemy's battlefield to push back their control of their own corporations and to fight for higher wages for working people in the form of unions. I should also mention that expropriation and squatting probably qualify under this category of economics. That's because in this process of expropriation or squatting, we are actually taking resources into our hands, which we then occupy and manage together. It's very important that we have both this constructive and combative vision about what we're doing in the economic sphere.
I just wanted to, first I want to mention something about Zhuangzi, who is super, you'll spend the rest of your life trying to figure out whether you've understood it. According to Zhuangzi, you should. You should spend the rest of your life questioning whether you've understood any of that. Yeah, it's a good read, and one that I haven't done in probably 20 years. But good book, highly recommend for sure. Oh fuck, what was I gonna say? Oh, talking about squatting. Right, this is something that, right, so I have an idea for some kind of big direct action, plan. Of course, nowhere near planning. I haven't even begun planning, yet alone anywhere near execution, but I think that this is what we should do with BlackRock, the organization that has bought up all of the properties all across the United States and most of the cities and most of the, especially when it comes to residential areas. Part of the reason why we're having such a housing crisis is because of BlackRock and other companies like BlackRock that keep buying up real estate properties and then just sitting on those real estate properties so that nobody can do anything with them. I think that we need to start organizing squatting, where we just take all of BlackRock's properties. We organize, we get all of the homeless people who would like to be homed in a place, and then we find a BlackRock property for them to move into, and we'll help them move in. We'll help get them established. We'll help, repair the plumbing or the electric or whatever it is that needs to be done so that they can live there. And when you do that, if you didn't know, if you begin the process of improving a property that somebody else has left abandoned, most states will allow you the process of legally claiming that property that you are squatting on. There are provisions, there are legal mechanisms by which you can go squat on a property, begin to improve that property, and then get to live there because you have demonstrated that you are going to use that property in a way that is beneficial for the community by developing it rather than just sitting on it. So I think that would be a really good direct action kind of initiative. Though going against BlackRock specifically is kind of a big ask. I think it would have to be an international, at least national kind of initiative that is able to get enough legal support to be able to go to war with BlackRock's lawyers. That, I think, would be one of the greatest obstacles. It's not the logistics of getting people organized and into places and begin to fix those places up so that they can have a good quality of life. I think that stuff will not be the difficult part. Right? There are definitely challenges there, but I think that the real challenges are going to be with combating the legal teams that are going to try to use every mechanism to make the process as slow and arduous or impossible as possible. We're going to transition. Well, I was just doing a quick aside, but I have a proposal that doesn't force people to divest housing, but discourages landlords completely. If you own more than one qualified unit, One is vacant for over 3 months. They're required to take a homeless person subsidized if they apply. Right. I think something like that could work. Some kind of, I think that kind of plan can work, Matt. Absolutely. I'm going to get back to the video and I'm going to marinate on that a little bit. That's a neat idea.
Because if all we do is fight with unions in order to overtake the workplaces that we are occupied within, well then the means of production and the management of the economy still rests within the hands of the capitalists themselves. We remain workers, and we have this continued relationship to the rest of the economy of being workers. Whereas if we were to carry out some form of vast expropriation when a revolution of some kind approaches, we're going to have to go from being workers to also being administrators and coordinators of various kinds, both within the workplace and within the broader economy. Cooperatives allow us to develop those skills, which are going to allow us to do coordination and to understand how to manage a complex economy well before that rupture ever arrives. You might consider them sort of revolutionary training grounds for the sort of things we're going to have to do after we succeed. And this is not to say that unions are not important. In fact, unions are very important, because the truth is cooperatives are unlikely to comprise the majority of the economy at any given point. It's more likely that cooperatives will end up being a single or maybe double-digit percentage of the economy when the time comes that we are actually in some sort of process of conflict with the prevailing power structures. So what that means is all of those people who are stuck in the capitalist mode of labor, those people also need defense from with the time comes that we are actually in a digit percentage of the economies will end up being a single or maybe double-digit percentage of the economy when the time comes that we are actually in some.
I'm sorry, there's something I'm missing here. I'm going to get in a second. Let's back this up a little bit more. So I missed something.
Likely to comprise the majority of the economy at any given point. It's more likely that cooperatives will end up being a single or maybe double-digit percentage of the economy when the time comes that we are actually in some sort of process of conflict with the prevailing power structures. So what that means is all of those people who are stuck in the capitalist mode of labor, those people also need defense from capitalist exploitation and a way to fight back against their exploitation within their workplaces, and that is the role of the union. I think that we're going to need both cooperatives and unions. We're going to need things like time banks. We're going to need mutual aid and direct distribution. We're going to need intentional communities. We're going to need all of these things combined together in order to create the sort of economic power that we need to go into conflict with these prevailing hierarchical power structures. This is a sort of economic engine that helps us build up resources and distribute them. These resources can then be funneled into our councils, funneled into our organizations, used to fund our strikes, and so on. The next pillar is defense. So
I can't wait to hear what we've got to say about defense, but I just want to get caught up in chat. Something I kind of feel like something we need to begin. Legal counsel / services. Seems most any other creative plan would probably fail by the pen. Yes. That's something that I think that we do need to start getting the ball rolling on is, I mean, already such things out there. So, that should be a very big focus for us on the left, is working out, legal services, in ways that we can, open the doors of access for other people. Because legalese is not that difficult to understand, actually. Most people don't know where to get started with regards to figuring out what laws are and how they work and how they apply to their particular situation. such that one can figure out how to navigate those laws to one's advantage, right? There's a steep learning curve there. But if you can show people the ropes, right? If you can open the doors to let people know how to get that information, they do. They can do that themselves. Because it's not difficult to understand legalese. There are barriers there, and those barriers are put there on purpose. The content of understanding legalese isn't difficult. It's meant to be esoteric on purpose so that most people don't bother taking the time to figure out how to do it. The red tape is part of the point of it. Anyways, key isn't gatekeeping, it's making the benefits universal. Right. Yes, and it will also get rid of it. The more I've been thinking about it, Matt, it is a really interesting idea. It seems like the kind of thing that could actually be legislated by governments, right? The state could say, okay, X number of or X kinds of people, right? People that have more than one home, people that are above a certain earning income and meet certain, right? This is something that we might even want a means test. But however we do it, there would be some great incentives, I think, built in there. From an extreme property, it's big and cheap, but it's in Illinois. Ew. That's funny. I know somebody that's in Illinois. It's one of the few tools we actually have access to, the law, right? And again, it's something that we can figure out, that you can take it upon yourself to figure out how law works. It's a lot of work, it's a lot of trouble, and it's what's the word? It's needlessly esoteric. You can be a lawyer and an anarchist. 100%. Absolutely. You can be asexual and a lawyer. After all, Phoenix Wright is Ace Attorney. That's right. We've got a whole game about it. Phoenix Wright is the ace icon. No, we should not let the state do anything. No, I know. That's what I was thinking is usually when it comes to these kinds of solutions, there's no way that you can implement them via the state without it being, without the whole thing collapsing. But Matt's proposal might be the kind of thing that we could see, and this is, we ought to look for strategies that we can utilize now, right? We can use mechanisms of the state to undermine other kinds of capital control. From what I understand so far, in the practicality, you can't use the state to undermine the state. And you can't use capital to undermine capital, but you can use one to undermine the other. You can use the state to though I don't know, you might be able to use capitalism against capitalism too. I haven't really spent that much time looking into that. Vacation and own the place, get a timeshare. Right. If you want to vacation and own the place, get a timeshare. Yeah, good.
Defense is precisely what it sounds like. This concept of defense is basically a recognition that violence is part of the realm of politics and that there is no escaping it. And that's to say that we need to not only be able to defend people where they're at, but we need to be prepared to defend all of the gains that we have made in the case that some sort of civil conflict or greater revolutionary rupture does take place. If we have to create our defenses on the spot, it is almost guaranteed that we will lose. So that's why in my video, Constructing the Revolution, I say,
some examples of defense organizations which might be formed are Cop Watch, Community Defense, Direct Action Security, and militias. Each of these, built for a different purpose, will also be structured in a slightly different way. For example, community defense and cop watch groups may not even be armed by default, but encouraged to arm themselves in the occasion that violence is being carried out in the area. Direct action security may often be armed in order to protect protesters from interference, as well as uniquely trained for protest safety tactics. However, there are examples of direct action security, such as the Bike Brigade, which are both effective and unarmed. By contrast, militias, as revolutionary bodies in waiting, will need to be armed and educated on the principles of military conflict, and should therefore read about military tactics and strategy, drill small unit tactics, and educate the community on its place in the larger revolutionary schema. What each defensive body holds in common, however, is that they should each be formed first at the level of the locality and should be based primarily on the needs of that locality.
So it's important to understand that these bodies of defense need to be legible and accountable to the communities that they're in. If they're not, there is the risk that they could do some very dangerous things and that nobody would even know who they were or how to hold them accountable if indeed they did something that the community did not approve of. Here by accountability, what I'm really saying is accountability to these revolutionary bodies, these community councils and these economic bodies. These should have a mechanism by which to both participate and to call into question the actions of these militia structures if they are formed. It's understandable if these militias are formed, they should be mostly clandestine, given that they are very likely to be suppressed by law enforcement and the state more broadly. However, if they are clandestine, they have the problem of not being legible to the very people that they are supposed to be protecting. So it's my recommendation that they begin as non-clandestine forces, and that they become clandestine in step with the suppression of the state. That is to say, if there is already a great deal of state suppression, then obviously they're going to have to start clandestine. But if you are in those occasions where you can be somewhat above ground, then you should probably default towards being more above ground so that you can actually interface with the community you are seeking to protect. However, as I emphasized, militias are not the only form of defense. They're just the form of defense that is going to allow us to weather this transition through a revolutionary juncture. That is to say, these militias are probably going to be the bodies that we combine together in order to create a sort of confederation of militant structures which will actually be able to defend the project. And I should emphasize, by a militia, I am talking about a group of people who are trained to do violence. I'm talking about a group of people who know how to use firearms, who know how to do small unit tactics, who know how to carry out the basics of warfare.
So, another aspect of diversity of tactics that we've talked about before, but is always worth drawing specific attention to. It would be unreasonable for us as organizers or as revolutionaries to require of everyone that those people be willing to do violence on behalf of the revolution. Under no circumstances, actually, should you ever call somebody else to do violence for any reason. That's just an important fundamental rule about morality. It is perfectly acceptable for you to be willing to do violence to protect people, or to protect yourself, or to protect the revolution, or to protect your whatever. In this kind of organization, in the way that we're talking about, in the way that Anarch is talking about here. This is why diversity of tactics is important, because some people are going to be willing to put their bodies physically in harm's way to protect other people. Some people are just going to want to do that kind of thing naturally. Some people are not. Some people are better suited at helping grow the gardens and helping organize and helping distribute the goods and services and not putting themselves in harm's way, right? So when we're organizing ourselves, we ought not to require of everyone that they be willing to do the same things that we are willing to do. This is something that I've seen in a lot of leftist groups or a lot of leftist spaces where they say, well, you can't talk about nonviolent tactics because nonviolent tactics enable the state and nonviolent tactics enable harm to minorities, right? And okay, that's fine if that's a principled take that you want to take and those are tactics that you want to employ. That doesn't mean that all of those other leftists out there aren't leftist enough because they're not willing to do the violence, right? That they can be leftists, they can still want to contribute to the revolution and help out with organizing and with establishing dual state power structures and establishing these kinds of networks without committing themselves, right? We shouldn't purity test other leftists on their willingness to do violence, is my point, right? We should never purity test other leftists on their unwillingness to do violence. That's an acceptable stance for someone to take, is to be unwilling to participate in the violence is a reasonable stance for a person to take in general, right?
Will require concerted action and conscious training if we are to create these bodies. It's also the reason why we cannot necessarily be distrustful of people who have a military background. These people are very likely to be able to train us to do the necessary things to build a successful unit, as well as to coordinate with other militia structures if things ever escalated to the point of civil conflict. The better trained we are ahead of time, the more likely we are to be able to defend what we have created and later, in a revolutionary conflict, overthrow the enemy. And I should note here that I don't actually think it's a good idea to rush into civil conflict or to rush into a revolutionary juncture against the state. Instead, I think it's best for us to use as much time as is available to us to prefigure all of the bodies that I'm mentioning here in the 4 pillars before the state tries to destroy us, because it absolutely will. And not only the state, but various forms of fascist counterinsurgency will also try to destroy us. When the time comes that this takes place, we have to be able to defend ourselves. We cannot be naive about what will happen in the future if we are successful in this prefigurative project. So we shouldn't be eager to do violence, but we should be capable. The last of the 4 pillars are what I call intelligence.
Yeah, transitioning between the pillars is always a good spot to pause, but nothing like gatekeeping to grow a community. Right, exactly. Would you do my violence for me, pretty please? Right. Can still have, yes, non-violent tactics can still have a considerable amount of assertiveness. And this is something that I talked about a long time ago, weeks when I first started coming back to streaming. One of the first topics that I started to tackle had to do with protest, right? When you are engaging in certain kinds of protest, those certain kinds of protests kind of necessitate non-violent tactics for you to be able to do those things successfully. Right? That doesn't mean that us leftists adopt nonviolence necessarily, right? But there are times and places when not only do we entertain nonviolence, but we might insist on nonviolence. There are situations, not just that it can be effective, but there are situations in which it's the most appropriate thing for us to do. But like Anarch is stressing here, we should be slow to respond with violence, but we should be fully capable of responding to violence in the appropriate way. I think is a good way to put this. And ex-veterans are certainly going to be a great resource, right? Right now in the United States, there are a lot of disenfranchised ex-veterans who feel abandoned by, right, there's a growing sentiment that people are feeling let down by the social contract. They feel the erosion of the social contract. And I think that ex-veterans, especially, that they are continually used as a political football by both sides, by both political parties, and rather than being used as a political football, ever getting them anything good, they always end up getting fucked, always end up getting nothing, always end up getting no help, right? And that's the same with every other demographic and every other community, right? We still don't have clean water in Flint, Michigan, despite the fact that Democrats run on that platform all the time, right? There is, I think, a growing dissatisfaction that we can tap into there.
This is to say, we need to be able to conduct intel operations as a movement. We need to be able to infiltrate the enemy. We need to be able to gather intelligence about their movements and their plans. We need to be able to conduct spycraft more broadly. We need to be able to actually provide a challenge to these intelligence agencies in both gathering information about us, and we need to provide a counterplay in gathering intelligence about them, because that is at the center of spycraft. And in order to do this, this aspect absolutely will have to be highly secretive and clandestine. And I give, in Constructing the Revolution, a mechanism by which we can carry out this intelligence and maintain anonymity and accountability at the same time, but I'm not going to belabor that here because it's somewhat involved. However, there need to be mechanisms by which these entities that are gathering intelligence can be held accountable, as the gathering of intelligence, and intelligence in a general sense, is a very likely place for you to get a runaway of power if you do not hold it in balance. Knowledge, as has been said, is power, and this is not some trite truism. This is actually accurate. So we have to take into account the power that is being given to the people who are going to attain all of this secret knowledge. We also have to be responsible in what we do and do not disseminate. That is to say, there is information which we can happily publish to the public and therefore undermine the operations of the enemy. And then there is information which has to be kept secret and only given to the people that are going to act upon it. Because the thing is that once the enemy knows that you know what it's doing, it can just change up its plans. So my general recommendation is that information about what the enemy is already doing or has done, that information should probably just be given to some form of, anonymous publisher, a sort of like copy of WikiLeaks, you might say. But for information that is about current movements, that is about the pertinent militant aspects of suppressing our movement and things we might be able to counter in what we do, that information should probably only be kept to the group of people who will be planning these militant actions. If you want to learn about how we can properly manage this compartmentalization, then you should watch the video Constructing the Revolution. However, here I just want to emphasize how incredibly important this aspect is. It makes or breaks revolutionary conflicts. So the last thing I want to say then is that none of this is going to take place without confederation. I've kind of talked about confederation a little bit before, but confederation is the idea that we take all of these autonomous bodies and then we create bodies that combine them together by which they can all coordinate with one another. And we should try to make these confederations get bigger and bigger and bigger and subsume more and more and more territory, because these confederations will then allow more and more of these horizontal power structures to coordinate together. And more coordination that our horizontal power structures have, the more power that we all have by relation. So this form of revolution that I'm proposing here, you might call prefigurative revolution. And this is a form of revolution where we try to create the alternative power structures within the current conditions as much as is conceivably possible before that any form of revolutionary rupture takes place. We're not rushing towards the rupture. We don't want the rupture. We want to create as much power for the alternative as possible before that rupture takes place. Not only because this gives legitimacy to the revolution, because so many people are involved in that revolutionary activity that are having their ideology and their interpersonality transformed by social structures within the things as they exist, but also because this allows us to amass the most power before we have to go into conflict with the...
Okay. I was going to try and wait to the end of the video, but I can't. I need to use the restroom way too badly. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to back the video up some because I want to address this specifically and leave you all with a music video. So I'm going to go use the restroom. I'm going to be right back. But I'll leave you with some music and then we'll wrap up the video when I get back.
We fear the ultra-violence, but it's already here. We fight fire with silence and pray somebody hears. Obey all of the tyrants, God christened with his tears. There's no apocalypticism, it's already here. It's already here. It's already here. There's no apocalypticism. It's already here. Abandon all the movements when they don't happen right. No one said the world can change in just a couple nights. We want a revolution, but only with condition. If it won't happen how I want, I don't want it at all. I don't want it at all. I don't want it at all. We pray for revolution, but we want apocalypticism. He woke up in a cardboard box and put a bullet in a sawed-off shotgun. He took his orders from a man who hit his car in a microphone. He came bearing the heart of a liar, wearing the face of an honest man. He woke up with a stranger's thoughts in his head and a new tongue in his mouth. He had all these new words and he wanted to spit them out. He was making the name of a monster, chasing the fame of a martyr, taking a page from the holy book. Stop feeding the dogs of war. We ain't keeping the peace no more. Whoa. Stop feeding the dogs of war. We ain't keeping the peace no more. Whoa. You can't see us, we own the night. We're in your head and hiding in plain sight. Wearing Nazi armbands and a cloak of white. Come to get you in the new fourth right now. We started pointing all our fingers at the people we decided were the problem with no doubt in our heads. And when they said it was oppression, we just said it was religion and they couldn't do a thing about it.
It is absolutely a bop, and you should check out the rest of it. But I think we want to get back to the video, right? Yeah, man, this song and this video are really, it's really very good. Very powerful, very poignant, and their take on apocalypticism, I think, is really. I might spend some time later, on a later stream, and just unpack this, the stuff that's in this video. So I'm gonna go ahead and share it. I'm gonna drop this in chat. Y'all check it out. It's fantastic. I'm gonna put that over on YouTube, even though nobody's been over here. Yeah. On my last stream, I kept forgetting about the people over on YouTube, and at the end of the stream, I feel so terrible. At the end of the stream, I was like, "Thanks, everybody," and I was going through everybody's names and everybody who was here on Twitch, and I completely forgot about YouTube. I had active people who were chatting over there and were contributing to the conversation, and I'm still getting used to it, YouTubers. I'm sorry. I'll try to get better at it. But oh, I forgot this. I haven't even taken a look at this yet. This is Matt. If Matt's still here, this is a video that Matt shared of. That's what I should have played. Well, no, I still want to see this. This is something. Well, Matt shared this in Discord. Everyone's got the Discord, so you've all probably seen it. I haven't had a chance to see it yet. I'll watch that later. Yeah. Let's get back to the video though, because we're about to make some pretty important headway.
All have by relation. So this form of revolution that I'm proposing here, you might call prefigurative revolution. And this is a form of revolution where we try to create the alternative power structures within the current conditions as much as is conceivably possible before that any form of revolutionary rupture takes place. We're not rushing towards the rupture. We don't want the rupture. We want to create as much power for the alternative as possible before that rupture takes place.
So, this is one of the best arguments against accelerationism. When people are talking about the idea that if we can just accelerate the collapse of the state, accelerate the collapse of capitalism, that this will inspire revolutionary energy. No, because if we have not done sufficient prefigurative building of power structures, what we're going to get when the state collapses is another state or chaos. Right? If we don't have the adequate power structures, if we don't have the prefiguration in place, if we don't understand as prefigurative figures what it is that we are supposed to do and how we're supposed to organize and how we're supposed to build coalitions and how we're supposed to do this in a way that's not oppressive or corrupt, right? If we don't have any practice with any of this, if we, right, we're asking for things to just get worse for no good reason. That's what accelerationism gives us. It gives us a much worse situation in which we are not prepared for the new worse situation. That's it. Only way to do it, got to be prepared. Teach by example and be the change you want to see in the world. Right. Yeah, there will be no time. And I'm really glad that Anarch has made a point of reiterating that several different times throughout this video, that at the time that shit's hitting the fan, right? When the revolutionary fomented energy reaches its apex, we need to be ready to go. Not, okay, how do we get organized? No, it's too late. It is way too late at that point. We need to already be ready to go when we get there. If we don't have replacements, the previous arrangements will reemerge. Exactly. The previous arrangements will simply reemerge, because if we have the material conditions and the state, and then we do some kind of acceleration thing that abolishes the state, guess what? The material conditions are no different. So guess what we'll get is literally the exact same thing. It's just a recreation of the exact same things. 100%.
Not only because this gives legitimacy to the revolution, because so many people are involved in that revolutionary activity that are having their ideology and their interpersonality transformed by social structures within the things as they exist, but also because this allows us to amass the most power before we have to go into conflict with the state and capital. It also means that if we are successful in overthrowing the state and capital, that we'll be more likely to be able to defend ourselves from external forms of intervention which have shown themselves to take place after any revolutionary juncture ever happens. This is to say, prefiguration is a way for us to resist imperialism and colonialism and other forms of intervention from external hierarchical power structures. Because it's been said you can do a revolution with somewhere around 3 to 5% of the population, I've heard. And we're proposing that we would build more and more and more. So as soon as we overcome that threshold of about 3 to 5%, we're probably going to be a considerable threat to the powers that be. And if they'll allow us to build larger than that 3 to 5%, 10, 20% of the populace subsumed into these horizontal structures, then there is probably very little they or any external source could possibly do to stop this revolution from taking place. And any attempt to attack and dismantle our horizontal power structures will probably backfire enormously. This also correlates with people being much more likely to defend the gains that they have made. It means that a lot of people are going to recognize that their interests are all tied up in these horizontal power structures now. These horizontal power structures provide them real things. The unions are there fighting for their benefits within their workplaces. The cooperatives are giving them forms of economic democracy by which they can determine their economic future. These mutual aid organizations are being funded by overages from those cooperatives and being funded by the money being funneled into them by the unions and so on. And this creates this large web of interconnections that people are very likely to fight for when the time comes. By contrast, if all we do is we rush into rupture and we have nothing to show for it, people are very likely to not support our rupture, because they're going to look at us and they're going to say, well, I don't think that you are a legitimate alternative to the structures that exist. They're going to be afraid to sacrifice what they already have. But if we have built the horizontal structures which can provide those things to them, then they can have pretty high confidence that we could then manage the rest of the economy, the rest of society, the rest of administering and coordinating all of these complex supply chains. So to recap what I've said, basically, in order for us to carry out a revolution, we have to be consistent with our principles. That is to say, we have to do this through direct action, which means we have to create alternatives to the structures that currently exist. Those alternatives are going to take the form of councils, economics, defense, and intelligence. And lastly, these have to be confederated together. They have to be combined into larger bodies that help them coordinate all of their horizontal powers together. So I think that's all I really wanted to say in this part of the lecture series. I just want to remind you that if you like this video, you should go down there and you should click like. If you have any thoughts or interests or concerns, you should go down to the comments and tell me what you think. Lastly, if this is like the third or fourth video you've been served up by the algorithm, you should go down and click subscribe, because this is the sort of content that I
just want to see if this link is going to go to a website that gives me information about them, but it doesn't look like. I found this link. Let's see if we can get that to work. What I want. You all can't see what I'm looking at, so I've clicked on this link, and whenever I click on that link, it doesn't look like it's trying to load. I'm not sure. I was just trying to get some more information on this. But there are some other socials here. I'm gonna do some more digging and see if I can get some information from them. Because it's not that far from me. I mean, it's not close. Not close, but it's not that far from me. It's a place that I could reasonably get. I could drive to and make a day trip of. Well, would be more than a day trip. I'd spend the night or a few days there if I was going to do something like that. But something that I might do. That's kind of a teaser for where I would like to go with the channel eventually. I'm not anywhere near there right now, but at some point, what I would like this channel to do is to do some traveling from place to place to place to place where people are doing direct action, where people are doing organizing, so that I can go to places and talk to people, and I can show other people on the internet where they can go to do direct action things. I can show people on the internet proof of concept, how to go about building your own kinds of power structures, setting up your own kinds of organizations, and making those things successful. Right? That's something that I'm shooting for, and that's actually been something that I've always kind of been shooting for with this channel, but I'm nowhere near there yet. I would have to have some more financial security than I have now, and I would need a more reliable vehicle, and I would need that vehicle to be something that I can sleep in. Right now, I'm in the process of turning my van into something that I can camp in, but it's still not weatherproof enough that I could use that as a mobile camp that I can go and live in a place for a few days and go check it out. But that is something, a teaser for later on down the line. That is something that I would like to do with this channel. Yeah, I guess that's true. Nowhere is really that far these days, depending on a person's level of dedication. Yeah, that's exactly the kind of thing that I had intended. Yeah, that would be cool. I would love to stop by and hang out with my chatters. Are you kidding me? If I could stop by your city and just like have a cup of coffee, that would be fantastic. And something that I would like to do, right? That's but we're just not there yet. But fantastic video. I really have been a big fan. Oh, I haven't shared the link to the video. Let me share the link to the video. Make sure if you like the video that you go click the link and then go to the video and click like, so that it promotes our friend and comrade Anarch, who has a fantastic understanding of anarchism and is helping us all learn more, which has been pretty fantastic, hasn't it? So, I'm really looking forward to finishing up this series. The next one is Revolutionary Roadmap. Then the next one after that is how do horizontal organizations function? And then we can finally get to how dual power could change society forever. And then there's the final video is another, looks like it's a promo for Cooperation Tulsa. Yeah, event coverage would be a win for sure. Absolutely. That would be also be able to be would be cool to be able to show up to a place and do real coverage. I'd never thought about the journalistic aspect of it, but that's not something I would be opposed to, right? Because it's really very powerful. When I was talking about normalization, right? Part of the strategy of normalization is that you make vivid the violence that is experienced by marginalized people in your culture and society. That's one of the most important, the most powerful aspects of normalization is when you can right, then this happens in movies and television where Black lives get to be transported into the homes of middle-class white people, right? The Black experience, or this other kind, whatever minority experience, is in living rooms of middle-class American, middle-class American, right? That to get those people to see, to watch, right? And not news. Because when we allow the news media to cover, and I was just watching something on Katrina, how the people became desperate, and immediately the news media started to talk about riots and looters and criminals, and right, that's what the media does. That's what the media does, is they vilify victims rather than humanizing the subjects of their content. And normalization has to be about humanizing, showing the violence for its naked violence, right? Rather than it being spun or it being framed in any kind of way. When you can expose the realities of a violent system to people who are privileged and don't ever experience those kinds of violences, those people begin to see their own system differently, right? They understand that they understand their relative privilege in that system when they are faced to come to terms with those realities. Yeah, absolutely. Manufacturing, media, and legal. Yeah, I think that those are really important aspects that we really ought to be focusing on. At the front end of my plan, got to have the visibility, and making others visible also sheds light on the host. Trashnomancer, a proactive campaign of visibility also allows you to use a little bit of smoke and mirrors yourself, ourselves, because we want all four of these pillars that Anarch is talking about. But one of those pillars is explicitly establishing militant groups who are prepared to do violence. And the state will not allow us to do that openly, right? That's something that would require a bit of smoke and mirrors. for lack of a better term. You were born in the year of Katrina. Yeah. It changed. It changed how we think about natural disasters. We are still reeling from the cultural shifts that resulted in the wake of Katrina. I hope that at some point we start to learn our lessons and start to actually do proactive things to not to run into those problems again. So far, I've not been impressed. Yes, it also provides social defense to have transparency, right? Right. Yeah, well, and thank you everybody for doing a good job of not Fed posting. I'm already skirting really close to some TOS violations with some of the stuff I've talked about so far. But I'm pretty confident that there's nothing that I've said that crosses that line, right? We're skirting the edge of the line, but we don't need to cross it. Hurricane Harvey and winter storms Uri are examples of us not learning the lessons. Yeah, terribly. I was trying to decide whether I was going to stick around and talk about more, but I think that this is a good place to cap it. Plus, I just found out there's something going on tonight that I should probably be involved in. So I should probably go meet up with some people and coordinate and make some plans. And that's apparently going on like right now. So yeah. so I'll probably go ahead and just call it here. Let's find us a raid target. These have been really I've really enjoyed the Anarch videos. But at the end of streams I'm always thinking that there's I don't know, still so much more to say. But that's okay. We'll just say it later. So that's what I was gonna do. Before I go anywhere, no, I'm not ready to make that decision yet. That's why yeah. I expect that for our next meeting on Friday, for the next stream on Friday, that I will probably also just do continue the Anarch series so that we can get through them because they are really very helpful, and this is going to be really useful for us going forward to have the language for everyone to be kind of on the same page about the concepts that we're working with. Even if we understand them a little bit differently, that's good. Right? We don't want to all be on the same page with how we feel about these things. We want a diversity of tactics, a diversity of viewpoints. That's healthy and good. But if we're all starting from the same place, then that's also helpful. But the transfers, okay. Yeah, no, I completely understand what you're saying, Trash and Mancer. I get that. And I'm usually pretty good. So I like to think that I'm usually pretty good at not divulging the secrets or talking around the secrets in a way that isn't too open. But but I have a bad track record when it comes to spoiling video games. Apparently, for some reason, I have a tendency to spoil those. But I do pretty good at other kinds of secrets. I don't know what it is about video games. I just start talking, and then next thing you know, I'm saying stuff that, anyways. Yeah, go watch Modern Anarchism if you want more information. Absolutely. Really, anybody that wants to go ahead and start looking at some of this stuff, getting ahead of on some of this stuff, feel free. Absolutely. Efficiency of honesty. If I lie, I need to keep a secret. That cost cognitive load. Not my style of death. Yeah, no, same for me too. Most of the secrets I keep are for someone's benefit. Like, this is going to be a surprise party for you, or this is something that we're, it's generally the secrets that I keep are not nefarious secrets. They're short secrets that I don't have to hold on for very long. Yeah, so it is definitely way too much cognitive load for me too. I can't keep up with the lies that I've told. I'm really a terrible liar because I don't have a good memory when it comes to those kinds of things. I can't, if I were to cook up a lie, it wouldn't be long before I forgot what was the lie and what was the reality. I wouldn't be able to keep the two straight. I've only got space in my head for one. So someone tells me something I should keep, it's fairly safe as I will likely forget. And that's another thing with me too. I often forget. Yeah, and that's another way to think about deception as a means of defense, right? An important strategy for us going forward is it's going to have to be, because I think that especially once we get to the videos where they start talking about building dual state power structures, when it comes to actually building dual state power structures, that always gets the attention of the state. And once you have the attention of the state, you are now an enemy. Right, there's generally not much segue in between attention of the state and is an enemy of the state. Once they've identified you, they're probably coming for you. Okay. Wow, there are a lot of people that I follow who are streaming online right now. Like, a lot. I can't remember who we've been streaming into. I don't do a good job of keeping track of who we've been streaming into. But let's stream into Noisy. Let's go see Noisy. Good. Thank you again, everybody, for being here. And as I've intimated over and over again, and I just cannot say enough, you all are fantastic, and you make this worthwhile. And I just enjoy. Well, and let me be clear. I don't enjoy showing up to Twitch and just talking at a camera. I enjoy you all. I enjoy this, right? So thank you. Thank you for this, for being you, for being here, and for contributing to my community. I love it. I love you. I appreciate it. So thank you, everyone. I don't have anyone to thank over on YouTube, but thank you, Trashnomancer, Jane, Nova Rider, for the fantastic question that you had earlier. Who else did we have? Matt stopped by for a little bit today. Apolitical Daddy stopped by for a little bit today. So we had some really great conversations. Good. Thank you all for being here. Until the next time I see you, be excellent to each other.